Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins in 1996, at St. Estes Reform School in California. Cletus, a serial killer, is imprisoned with his girlfriend, Frances. She has superpowers, and when he asks what the doctor told her, she adds that the mutations and powers are growing, and she's worried they'll transport her to another location, where other people are like her. And she was right to be worried, because right then, despite Cletus's rage, the guards carry Frances away. On the way, she uses her power to manipulate sound to fight the guards, but a guard manages to shoot her. She arrives at the hospital, and is greeted at her new home. Back in the present, Frances is locked up in Ravencroft, a criminally insane mental institution, and some doctors come in to feed her with safeguards, so she doesn't attack them with her superpower. Every day, it seems, they hand her the newspaper, where she reads about her boyfriend Cletus, who is in prison, and it is unknown whether he will be sentenced to death. Meanwhile, Eddie, the protagonist, continues to work as a journalist, and we learn that Cletus wishes to speak with him, in order to learn where the rest of the remains are buried. The detective suggests that he go, and although the Venom initially wants to eat the detective, Eddie manages to keep him in the toilet. He then talks to the supervisor and accepts the task. He goes to see Cletus in San Quentin prison. There, Cletus explains that all he wants is to send a message to his admirers, and in exchange, he'll offer him his life story. Since he'll expose all his secrets, Eddie's career as a journalist will be restored. Cletus tells him the wording he wants on the front page, that distant cathedral is all I see, fractures angel, the other part of me. Eddie agrees and puts it on the front page of the newspaper, and his girlfriend Frances reads it. Before they leave, Venom instructs Eddie to see Cletus's drawings on the wall. Cletus encourages him not to forget about him, and Eddie leaves. Back at home, Eddie sketches Cletus' drawings, but he doesn't understand what they mean. However, Venom instructs him to pay attention, and after reading up a few things on the internet, they determine one of the drawings is where the victims' bodies are buried. Then the cops uncover some dead, and begin questioning Eddie, because he's the only person Cletus talks to. The detective becomes enraged, since the inquiry was conducted by a journalist rather than the police. In addition, the police confirm the death penalty for Cletus, so both he and Frances are enraged. Venom tells him late at night that they should start going out and catching criminals, so he can devour them. He also says he wants to be free, that he's hungry, and he doesn't want to eat the chickens because they've become his buddies. At one point, they realize their relationship is doomed, and go in search of food, but Mrs. Chen is out of chocolates, so even though Venom wants to eat human brains, Eddie brings him to eat chickens. As they see a robber, Venom goes to eat him, but Eddie refuses, and ends up putting him in the trash. Eddie's ex-girlfriend, and calls him. She tells him that she needed some time to process all that happened earlier, and she ultimately asks him if they can meet to talk. He agrees, and Venom is thrilled. They go to a restaurant the next night, but the conversation becomes awkward. They converse about stuff that no one cares about, and she tells him that she wanted to meet and talk to him because she's getting married. She's apparently getting married to her new boyfriend Dan, and while Eddie expresses his happiness for her, Venom is sadder than ever. Following that, she finds him strange and asks whether Venom is still inside him, but he claims no and that he died earlier. After chatting and telling him that she isn't ready for commitments, she realizes that Venom is still within her ex-boyfriend, so she instructs Venom to take care of Eddie, and they leave in tears. They ride around on a motorcycle for a while, and Venom assures Eddie not to worry, because he'll get him out of this one. A little Venom relaxes by doing what he does best, cooking for Eddie. He grabs the mail and receives a letter from Cletus. There, he invites him to watch his execution and his final moments on Earth. He also tells him that he is to be blamed for Cletus' death. But if he hadn't been revived at the time, he would never have killed his grandmother, mother and dog, and thus he would never have been beaten by his father and sent to reform school, where he met his girlfriend. Eddie and Venom visit Cletus in jail the next day. Eddie records the interview, and Cletus speaks with him about the ramifications of our actions. He tells him that they are the same, and that they are both related. When asked if he has any wishes before he dies, Cletus desires that Eddie spend the rest of his life alone, just like him. There, he starts telling him things to infuriate Venom, until he finally gets the symbiote to attack him, and Cletus bites him, and Eddie learns he doesn't have blood inside him. Eddie and Venom argue, and Venom tells him that everything he has accomplished is because of him, but they end up fighting, and Venom wants to kick him out of the house by throwing all of his belongings. Finally, Venom leaves and enters the body of another man on the street, and Eddie is free, but he begins to hear noises, and notices that Venom has broken his entire motorcycle, and finally, Venom moves into the body of a woman riding a bike. The next day is Cletus sentenced to death. He says his final words, before being injected with the lethal dose, but something unusual begins to happen. Carnage emerges and assassinates the first cop. After that, he goes in search of the mayor, killing many innocent people in the process. Finally, Cletus escapes with his new symbiote, Carnage, inside. Eddie is already enjoying his life without Venom. The next day, he begins to renovate his apartment and frees the chickens. Meanwhile, Venom goes around the city. At night, silently, Eddie sees on TV that serial killer Cletus has escaped. The detective then appears and begins to suspect Eddie. He tells him he doesn't know anything, and the investigator eventually doesn't tell him anything and goes. Following that, he begins listening to the recording of the last time he saw Cletus, but he understands nothing. Meanwhile, Venom continues his search for a fitting body, but along the way, an innocent guy gets killed. Venom then moves on to the body of another man, who happens to be at a costume party. Thus Venom passes unseen, and everyone loves the outfit. Meanwhile, Cletus and Carnage arrive in the city, and murders another innocent person. Following that, Cletus borrows a car, begins conversing with his symbiote, and they agree to help each other, because Carnage wants to kill Venom, and Cletus wants to find his girlfriend. They hurl a van over the bridge on the way, for no apparent reason. Eddie continues his investigation and visits the reform school from earlier. Then he calls a detective after seeing the couple's initials on a tree. He asks him whether he knows a woman with the initials FB, and he tells him her name, but he also admits to killing her many years ago. Elsewhere, Cletus enters a building and kills another individual. He goes online, and discovers that Frances is still alive. She is imprisoned in her cell, while the doctor advises her that her boyfriend has fled, but will never be able to find her in this location, or perhaps, he will, because Cletus appears at that moment. Cletus introduces her to Carnage, and together they smash the jail and escape, killing 6 guards in the process. They flee in the car, until Carnage begins attacking the cops. Frances uses her powers to smash a helicopter, but Carnage is sensitive to sound, and warns her not to do it again. Following that, Venom nearly dies while asking a Chinese woman for chocolate. A detective questions Eddie about why unusual things often happen around him, and he mentions that the rest of the patients in the hospital claim to have seen a monster. Eddie realizes Cletus bit his palm in the prison, and begins to comprehend everything. He phones his ex-girlfriend, and informs her that the serial killer is also hiding an alien inside, and that everyone must now find Venom. She goes to the Chinese market to look for Venom, and finds he is inside Mrs. Chen. So she ends up convincing him, and together they try to find Eddie. Meanwhile, Cletus burns down the reform school, and now they're on their way to find the detective Venom and Eddie. Eddie's ex enters with Venom inside her, and drags Eddie out of the police station. On the way, Venom and Eddie mend their bond once again. The detectives come upon Carnage and Cletus, and they abduct him in order to take him to Frances. They all go looking for her, when Frances enters Eddie's room, and sees Anne's picture with the engagement ring. After a while, Frances finds them. She incapacitates Anne's boyfriend, and tells him that Cletus wants to trade Eddie's head for hers, so she kidnaps Anne too. Dan then calls Eddie, and informs him that they have kidnapped Anne, and are on their way to the wedding. Specifically, it's the wedding of Cletus and Frances, who abducted a priest. Eddie appears with Venom at one point, and it appears that they are about to battle, but Venom is terrified, since Carnage is too powerful. Eddie eventually convinces Venom, and the inevitable conflict between the aliens begins. Frances is about to kill the detective, when Carnage interrupts to warn her to stop screaming, and he also uses the opportunity to eat the priest for no reason. Meanwhile, the detective flees, and Frances sets out to find him, as the others continue to fight. Cletus despises Eddie because, as a journalist, he never revealed the reason for his evil, and he also never talked about when he was a youngster, and was abused by his family. As they continue to fight, Dan sets Carnage on fire, and he chases Dan down, nearly killing him, until Venom rings the bell, which stops the evil. Carnage and Venom continue to struggle, but Carnage is much stronger. He leaps to the top, and strangles Frances, infuriating Cletus. Venom comes up and stabs Carnage, noticing the discord between him and Cletus. This enrages Carnage even more, and he slowly destroys Venom, but not before ensuring Anne's safety with Dan. Venom notices Frances, and lets her fall to make a sound, weakening Carnage. Carnage and Cletus are then devoured by Venom. The detective is still alive, but his eye color is bizarre. Eddie and Venom eventually flee, because they are wanted by the police. Ultimately, they are still friends on the run, and they go on vacation to a beach, as Venom had requested. We see Eddie watching TV, where Venom states that everyone has a hidden past, and that he has 80 billion light years of knowledge of other universes. But then something strange happens, and they're transported to another location, where they watch J. Jonah Jameson talking about Spider-Man's revealed identity as Peter Parker on television. Venom licks the screen. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.